concentrate on what I'm doing at least part of the time. Do you want me to help you with that? You're having a hard time getting some paint out of it? Hello? Just getting a few things set up here. Oh, don't take the lid off. Look, if you do that, right, and hold it upside down, what do you think is going to happen? Yeah, it's going to hit the floor, isn't it? And then, nice daddy will go on holiday. I'm not going to throw it at you. Crossface daddy will come to stay for a little while. Yeah, look. You started a really nice one. Yesterday or the day before? Yeah, this one, look. Started off as a rainbow and you added some things, like a bit like your Mondrian painting you did. Ow. So, yeah. That was the mic stand actually today.
It's like a curse.
Yeah. Hello, Lee. Hi, Ginia. Please let me know. Morning, Diane. Please let me know if you can see me and if you can hear me okay. Everything seems to be working as far as I can tell over here. Yeah, challenging subject today. Let's get the cameras rolling. Here's the camera on the easel. I've knocked that a little. I'll just have a look. Just walked into it when I was setting up. Something like that. Should do. Here's the reference today. The palette. These are oxlips, member of the Primula family, and they came from the garden this morning. Really pretty flowers. So the biggest challenge that I've got today with these flowers is the purple ones, magenta. I think that colour is out of the range of paint. This is about that. This is a chip from the Monsul book, and it's about the same value as those flowers, local colour. And even this chip is the highest chroma chip at this value in the book. And the flowers are higher chroma than that. I've got the highest chroma magenta I've got is Winsor & Newton. Permanent magenta, actually, is this a single pigment? Yeah, PV19. And it's this. Slightly darker and it looks slightly more red. So if I bring a bit of white into it, bring it up to the same value. Way too much. So I'm just curious before I even start today if I'm going to be able to reach that colour. If I can't reach it, it's not the end of the world, I'll just get as close as I can. When I say reach it, I mean the chroma. It's going to need some blue in it as well, because it's a little bit too far towards red. It's slightly lighter. I haven't beaten the chroma. The chroma, I think, is probably fairly close. I was looking on the web earlier on for Michael Harding's colours to see if he had a really high chroma magenta. Michael Harding's paints often slightly higher chroma than Winsor & Newton. But I don't have, he has a magenta, which I don't have. There may be others that I don't know about in other brands, you know, the highest chroma. I'd be interested to find out. Highest chroma magenta I can get. It's not a colour I'm after often, but it's a tricky one. Okay, so the value is about right here, I think. Let me bring the palette up so you can see it more clearly. This is the dab I just put down, and I think I'm the right hue and the right value, and I think possibly the chroma is very slightly higher than the chip, but it's not noticeably higher. So I'm still going to be struggling, you know. This is like, for the local colour, that's the closest I'm going to be able to get to those magenta flowers. They're all oxlips. And I picked them because they look so beautiful against the green yellow. And the other ones, you would probably call them yellow. If you looked at them, you would probably call them yellow, but they're green. Very light value, low chroma green. Slightly towards yellow. I mean a yellow green, but they are nonetheless green. So apart from this magenta, excuse me, shortbread biscuit, the next challenge, I think the most obvious one, is a lot in the subject. So I'm going to try and paint it. You'll be used to this if you've seen me do one of these streams before. I'm going to try and set it up in very... You alright? Okay? Want some water?
Oh yeah, I'm just drinking some beer.
Don't drink that, it's got paint in it. Crazy boy. I'm going to try and paint it in very simple shapes, light and shadow, get the colours as close as I can. A lot of it I'm going to suggest. I have a look for this painting in mind already. I don't know, obviously, if it's going to work out or not. So this is a couch of linseed oil. We start in the same way these days. And this is quite a light, it's a light painting. So I'm going to tone the canvas, the panel, slightly with a lightish, close to neutral. Oh,
do you want me to get you some?
yeah, there's some in the jar over there, look.
I just picked you up some.
And I'll wipe that off because I don't want too much oil on there.
How much do you want? 4?
Do you want a big fat brush or a little skinny brush? Skinny brushes.
Hey, that's it. Okay. One. Okay. Here's a really skinny brush. What? How do you know this? Here's a really skinny brush. What the? Dad, why do you have this much of this?
That's too, you can't paint with that. You can't paint with it. It's got like 2 hairs left on it.
No, I gave
It's not gonna, I know, you're just messing about. It's not really not going to work out for him, that. It's not. Oh dear.
Trust me, it won't, Jasper.
It really won't. Here,
Oh no.
have a fat one as well, just in case, right?
Towel.
Have a couple of fat ones.
Yeah.
Or do you want something in between? That's a skinny brush you got there, but look, I've got quite a few that are somewhere in between that you might like. Try some of those.
If I want to make a darker grey, I have to put in more black.
Yeah, white makes a lighter grey. You see, so what I was saying before, like that would probably be good for like the background.
Yeah, definitely.
So you could paint all around the background with that colour. Sorry, I'm being very remiss in not saying hello to everybody. Hi, Christy. Hi, Irene. Hello, Miriam. And Anne watching on YouTube. Hello. Thank you. That's good to know.
Oh, and I'll swim.
Hello, Susan. You might think they're delightful, but they're both very naughty and they should be told off. What do you think?
No.
Oh.
No.
Say no in the comments. Hi, Lara. Hello, Carmen. Nice to see you. Michael Harding Magenta. Compare the chroma with Winsor & Newton Yeah, Diane, I would be fascinated to know how they compare. I really would. Hello, Elaine. Nice to see you. Hello, Georgia. Janice, hello. You're very welcome. Hello, Richard. Hello, Cindy, watching on YouTube from Texas. Morning, Chris. Let's get going. I'm going to try and rough out first where I think I'm going to want things to sit the composition. I'm being careful to keep things at the beginning stages fairly neutral today, because what I have in mind for this, I'm not going to try and paint it literally. I'm certainly not going to try and paint every flower. But I have in mind that the focus is going to be the yellow and magenta flowers here. And everything else is going to kind of merge off into light and shadow. Not very defined. No hard edges. And you see the back where the board I've got at the back joins the cloth. That edge I won't be putting that edge in at all, I don't think. How can you look? I stuck it down for you. How could you have lost it already?
I don't know.
Do you need a hand or something?
Wait, is that the one in the paint?
You want a hand? Do you need me to find you it, or? So I'm just thinking about. The back is going to be. I'm going to have like a. I'm going to use that back edge for a reference point, but I'm not actually going to paint it in, or at least it will be. Oh, I think it will probably be very vague. Would it be about there? Won't be able to see it over here. Down here, I think I want to show the edge of the cloth. Probably going to be about there-ish. The magenta flowers I want to be somewhere around this area. Which I mean, the edge of that little pot I've got at the front there is going to be around there. That's a favourite pot. I've painted it a lot of times, although I haven't done it for a while. Should make the bowl slightly.
I'm taking my time. I'm going even slower than I did yesterday.
Taking your time is always good.
Even when I went really. I went slow.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to look at it. It's better to get less of it finished and it be good, and than to rush and then it not work out. Hey, Bean. This is your paper here. This is your paper. You've already been drawing on it. Do you want to continue with this? Continue with this one.
I think he lost it. And then he was just.
No, it was just there. It was just on the pile. So if that's your shadow side, is that going to be your shadow side? I would mix a slightly lighter grey than that and use that for your background. You can paint it all the way around the cube.
I already have done that, Dad.
Ah, cool.
See, I've made it right.
Yeah, right.
Why not the lines?
Probably going to come on the yellow flowers, the whole of the flower. Something like a couple of small ones right near the top.
Stop flipping over. I know. No, I'm smudging it. But I tried to.
That's not. Why do you think that's messed up? You can't. No, I told you. You need to keep your cube here so you can look at it.
Yeah.
Keep the paint out of the way, because look, if you put it there, it's in shadow. Okay. So here you've got a light side and a shadow side.
I can't see that side.
If you lean forward a little bit, you'll be able to see. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Do it like that. Yeah. So I don't think you messed up at all. That's great. What I would do, oh yeah, you can neaten that up. Don't worry about that. I would put your background in now, but I think you want to be even lighter than that.
Do I need to put anything here, like on the top?
Well, you can do that later. If you put your background in, it'll be easier to work out where everything else fits in. You see. Well, what I would do is paint it pretty much all the same grey, and just mix a lighter grey.
Yeah, maybe that could be. Yeah, I'm going to use different paper.
Just trying to. Okay, the drawing is wildly out at the moment. I'm trying to decide. Where everything is going to fit. Do you want any yellow in it, do you think?
No. Yellow. A piece of yellow. Down into Minecraft, and then you need to press.
So there's a couple of flowers that are not in this central kind of bunch. This central lot I'm going to paint mostly as a mass.
You would want to paintbrush. We need it. I absolutely hardly anything. I don't know.
You don't like black?
Really messed up on my background.
What? How is that messed up? It's great. Yeah, it's not very light. Well, why don't you mix some more white in? You haven't got enough paint as well. Mix a load more white in. Get yourself a big fat brush. Like this, look. Do you want a hand? Should I give you a quick hand?
Sure.
Get a load of white. You need lots of paint there. You can get a bit of water in it if you want to. There you go, that's what you need. And then just paint it all the way around.
Paint over it.
Don't worry about that bit, just worry about painting around the cube. It's going really good. Be glad, don't worry about it.
Hardly any orange. Finish your painting first.
And like I told you the other day, how long I've been live has no bearing at all on when you get some screen time, dude. Does it?
Yes.
How is that then? How does that work? No, just flipping no. You can have some screen time later, but not now, okay? I don't want you spending all day on your screen. A little bit is fine, but too much isn't good for you. Huh? 3 hours? I don't think I'll be on that long.
And I don't think anybody would want to watch for 3 hours.
Do you think I'm too boring? What? Do you think I'm boring or something? They might want to watch.
They would not want to watch for 10 hours, would they?
No. I don't think I could paint for 10 hours.
For 10 hours. Well, you painted for 6 weeks. Well, if you
Yeah, but not without a break, you know.
If you paint for 10 hours, you would have to do like. The line with the stressful crime pretty well. I don't want you to look at that. Maybe that one. That's good. Oopsie, let me down.
So I've probably got, I can't really draw out much more than this, I don't think. I'll get the cup a bit neater as I go along, this little cup. I mostly want to be thinking about the value balance immediately now, and a lot of that is going to depend on the colour. So the bit that I really need to work, the relationship that I really want to work is between the very light green yellow flowers and the magenta ones. So I'm going to try and start by setting that up first. And it won't look like anything to begin with until I get a little further in. I'll put the lightest light in as well straight away, which is titanium white, which is going to be the highlight, the little cup.
I'm close to finishing my background.
You're doing really well.
Not right now, I don't want to.
Okay, you tell me when you want to.
Maybe when I finish my background.
Okay, that's cool. So this is the right hue. If I can't really go any lighter than this, otherwise I'll be up in the same range as titanium white, and I want the highest value. They're close anyway. I want the highest value to be that there. So let's just think about, it would be a light shape. I'm just thinking about this pretty much as one shape. So it's going to be light over here and shadow over there.
draw pretty
And then I
well,
can.
aren't you?
Yeah, Mum's good, yeah. It's light. Flowers up here. Just want to put notes in the right place at the moment. So the shadow, it's not. I need a dark in. So the darkest part is right in here. There's a bit of soil. So that's ivory black, which is the bottom of the range that I can reach. This is raw umber. Oh, good. Yeah, have confidence. You can do nice stuff with paint. So my magenta flowers in the light are going to be very slightly lighter. About the relationship of them to the darkest dark. This is. You got hot cross buns again? Surely not. Oh, boo. But you have just had shortbread.
There's no thing.
And the shadow. Actually, let's. Not quite as dark as the darkest dark, but almost. There's lost too much chroma. There's one of the flowers down here is in the magenta ones is in shadow. Actually, being slightly translucent gives it a little bit more. I should have done here that I didn't do. Wipe that off first. And get back to the panel. So that can be the highest chroma because I painted it into the couch without wiping it off, which is never good. I forgot that stage. Because it would lower the value and the chroma. So, just thinking relationships and just putting notes down doesn't matter so much. They need to be in roughly the right place, but not trying to paint flowers. It's better. But it's a lot better than you think, big lad. It's great. It's great. That's perfect. Yeah, no, it's really good. It's really good. And you got your shadow side there. That's really good. Do you remember what we were saying about the cast shadow? And that's the shadow that's cast by the cube onto the ground, isn't it? Is that darker, do you think, than the shadow side of the cube, or is it lighter? I think you might want to look again. Look carefully at the shadow side of the cube. And that's the shadow. Yeah, it's quite dark, isn't it? Yeah. Quite dark. So I'm also thinking about the value of the cloth. running out of white.
Yeah.
I still haven't ordered any. Try to remember, and I'll try to remember as well later. Did I put a different colour tone background for the painting today? Lane says yes. It was a close to neutral, and I've deliberately done it lighter, so it was close to this here, so I mixed a bit more titanium white with it, so that when I wiped it off it's quite a bit lighter, because the painting overall is going to be lighter. It's more like the last painting, the one I just finished of the daffodils, was light flowers on a darker background. All of this is light, really, apart from the shadows cast by things. So yeah, it's very different kind of space. There's no deep shadow in the background today. Good morning to everybody who's joined, or good afternoon, whatever time it is since I've started. Jean, yes they are. Yeah, yes they are. I don't think they are. Well, they see quite a bit of it. Your little brother wants my studio, doesn't he, for his own? He wants to move in. Hello, big fella. Oh, he's here. You can hear him, he's hiding behind me. He thinks I don't know, but I do. So again, the light of I'm just thinking about what things are the same value and where things are going to fit in the value range. I'm not particularly interested in exactly the value they appear. I just want to know what value they're the same as. So the flowers, for instance, the green-yellow flowers, very, very light. So if I get a chip out like this, and I have a piece of card with a hole in it, and I angle this, I'll have to angle it towards the light to be the same value as the flowers. Even then it's not as light as the flowers. They're very, very light. Here's the lightest chip I have. Okay. And the cloth is darker than the flowers. Just a good reference, you know. It's not a lot darker, but it's a bit darker than the flowers.
Finished.
Really nice. What about the cast shadow out the back there? Don't forget the cast shadow.
Yeah.
Remember what the cast shadow is? It's the shadow that falls on the ground behind the cube. It's where the cube interrupts the light, and that makes a shadow. Where was I? Yeah, the cloth. So it has a slightly violet cast, which I tend to, slightly violet hue, which I tend to overemphasize a little bit in paintings because I like it. But it's not that much, so I'm going to knock it down with a neutral. And you know, I'm sorting out the values on the palette as I paint. So the value of the cloth, the light part of the cloth, needs to be lower than the lightest part of the flowers, which is there, but closer than that. I don't want to go down the value scale too quickly, or I'll run out of space for everything else. Did he finish his painting? You shouldn't worry so much. No, yeah, but if you did, it doesn't matter. You can always change your painting. What do you think is that you're not happy about? Oh, so what do you do if something is too dark? Put a lighter colour over it, so you can mix a lighter grey and then go over it. It looks really nice, actually. I really like that. Why is there a marble on the floor? Why are there two marbles on the floor? And who said you can have is that for me? The hot cross bun is for me, right? Are you sharing? Are you going to do some nice sharing with your dad? What? You come in here, put marbles on the floor, eat hot cross buns in front of me, don't share. So let's check that
What is it
value
next?
against the light of the flowers. It's close, but slightly lighter.
I need to show Mum my painting. Oh.
Let's have a look. It's really, really nice. Can I say one thing that you could might want to change? It's
Yeah,
great,
see,
but
that's
look, you see that bit there?
Yeah.
The shadow can never stick out more than the cube. So if the edge of the shadow should start at the bottom of the cube there, so you could get a light background colour, and look, and just paint over that strip there,
Okay.
if you wanted to. But I think it looks great.
Then we need to strip.
So setting up initial
Oh, we need
values will mean that I've got something to relate everything to. Mum, do I have one? I'm not going to get one, am I? So cruel. That's not nice, of course she cares. Hmm? She does. Yeah, I'm sure she did. That's a good thing, B. It's a good thing Mum likes his painting. She likes your paintings too. Joan, yes, it will be viewable later. I'm broadcasting it to my personal Facebook profile and to the Art of Calm group on Facebook, and to YouTube as well. And it will be viewable on all of those places afterwards. I know this is taking me a long time just to get the basics down, but I'm trying very hard to get a good idea of the various values. Now, the value of the background here is going to be, in terms of where it is between the light of the flowers and the darkest dark here, it's going to be much closer to the flowers. Darker than this, but not by much. Going to be mostly neutral. Let's put a kind of a test value in for that. I think that's probably darker than I want it to be, because I have in mind that I want the middle values to be slightly lighter in this painting. I have in mind that I want a light painting, so you can change the value balance. You don't have to paint things exactly the value that they appear, but it needs to be consistent if you change it. So the relationships need to make sense. Probably do quite a bit of adjusting as I go with this one. And I want these flowers to show against the background though, so. Excuse me. Yes, I did the dab. So what's going to be probably, so I'm looking for relationships. What's going to be probably a useful one is the relationship between the shadow side of these light flowers and the background. So I'm going to check how close they are. So I'm looking at a shadow area on the flowers. One of the white flowers, which is completely, the yellow flowers, which is green I should say, is completely in shadow, matching the value. The background is very slightly lighter. But the shadow side of those flowers, I want it to be quite close to the lights. Let's have a go at mixing. You watching my stream? I wonder sometimes. The kids growing up looking at their dad streaming on YouTube, if they think it's a normal thing that dads do. Littlest one just draws incessantly, including on the walls, and he is adamant that he wants to be an artist and he wants my studio off me. Shadow side, slightly darker than the background. The background's going to have to come up, I think, if this is going to be the shadow side of the flowers. So I'm just painting it as if it was one shape, you know, at the moment. This flower right here is mostly in shadow. I mean, obviously it's not, and some parts are shadow and some parts are light, but shadow here against the background should be, against this dark here, should be very light still, so that's good. So that's a relationship I need to bear in mind. I'm not interested at all in the form yet. I'm trying to get things in roughly in the right place. I'm just thinking about relationships. All I'm doing. So in fact this background here be about the same, but if anything slightly lighter than the shadow side of these flowers, which means it has to come up, which means they won't stand out as strongly as they could. Against that background. I may adjust this. But it does get darker over here because we've got some shadow. Squinting right down, you know, within this mass there's some differentiation obviously between light and shadow. What I'm hoping to do is gradually to refine them bit by bit until I get to a point where I think it works. Rather than trying to paint a flower and then move on to the next flower, you know, it's a different way of approaching it really. concerned that these little flowers aren't standing out much against the background. I want to bring it down, but that means I've got to bring this value down, and I want the difference between the light and shadow of these flowers to be a really central part of the painting. I can change it. I don't have to stay with the relationship that's there, but it's the way I approach things. I try to get the relationships right in the beginning. So I'm thinking now about the cup and the bowl and the cast shadows here. So the value of those. So against get the cast shadows on the cloth first. They're a lot darker than the shadow side flowers, which is interesting. Because the cloth is the local value of the cloth is similar to these flowers, but the shadow cast onto it, the cloth in shadow, is lower value than the flowers in shadow. Don't really have anything else to compare it to yet, so it's still considerably lighter than the darkest dark, which is there. If I was looking at a scale between the light and the dark, it's closer to the light. The shadow side of the cup is lighter than the cast shadow, very slightly. Running out of space already. Hi, Renee. Yeah, I don't know. The setup is beautiful. You know, it's complicated, but in a way, I'm just approaching it like I approach everything else. It's like, what's darker, what's lighter? Where do I want the mid values to go? What are the relationships, and can I set up the light right? I have in mind that I want to do a lightish overall painting with these dark accents of magenta. The central part that has to work is the light on the flowers, so you know, everything is going to relate to that. Hello, Deepa. Hello, Ernesto from Hamburg. Very cool. Hello, Marianne. And hello, Vida. Lots of people still joining. Hi, Daphne. Nice to see you. Hi, Sika from Helsinki. Wow. Welcome. Hello, Elaine. You're in Florida. I've got family in Florida. My wife's family are in Florida. If you see me type on YouTube, it's not me. It's my youngest boy. Just so you know. Morning, Jean. Good night from Indonesia. Wow. Yeah, I bet time zone is completely different there, huh? Thinking about. Hello, Brenda. Nice to see you. What size is the panel? Let me measure it and tell you. If I can find my ruler. Kids in the studio, things tend to go walking around. Now, they actually do these in centimetres, so it's 18 centimetres by 24, which is roughly 7 by 9, is it? Yeah, 7 by 9 and about 9.5. So it's not a big panel, you know, it's a smallish panel. So I'm going to start off by mixing the colour for the light side of that little pot. It's on the way to a blue, so I'll mix a blue of the right value first. It wants to go more yellow, so well, it's low chroma, so I'm going to bring a bit of yellow ochre in and mix that to the same value. Just use a bit of that to swing the hue around without affecting anything else.
How's it going?
Yeah, all right, I think. It's a tricky one. It's going all right, I think. There's not much to see yet. It takes a little while until I get it to the point where it starts to create the space. Can I see how's your cube painting? Can I see?
My cube, I didn't do anything to it, but...
That's cool.
You can see it.
I really like it. Do you want to show it to everybody or not? I think it's really good. If you wanted to show it to everyone, you could. Yeah?
It's really bad, though.
It's not really bad. I think you've done a really good job.
Well, where do I have to put it?
Well, if you want everyone to show it, you need to give it to me, and you want everyone to see it. This is my boy's cube painting. Learning about light and shadow. Pretty cool, huh?
It's alright.
There you go. It's great. What do you mean it's alright? You did a really good job. You know the best thing about that is it's way, way better than the one you did yesterday.
Can I show them the one I did yesterday?
Yeah, sure, yeah, if you want to.
This one's even worse.
What do you mean even worse? This was your first attempt. This was his first attempt yesterday. Can you see it's on there? You can see it on the screen.
Yeah.
So
but
you've
they
come.
Can't see it yet,
Yeah, in a minute they will. You've come a long way. Yeah, there's a bit of a lag. You see, there's a slight lag.
There's a string there. Because when I want to do it for if I can show my friends.
Well, Christy says very nice, and Daphne
Thank
says
you.
way cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Phyllis says it's cool. Diane says wow, really good. There you go. Ginny, yes, I'm painting these flowers quite a bit smaller than life size. Yeah. It's probably fairly close to sight size actually. Just thinking about the hue for the shadow side. I'm working very slowly today. It's kind of it's a green blue. I don't want it to be, it's going to need to be fairly light still, the shadow side. It's probably going to be higher than a middle value, I think, because it's so light. So the cast shadows are probably about the middle of the value scale at the moment. Starting to think, as I often do at an early stage in paintings, if this one might end up just being more of an exploration rather than a finished piece. I think that's too dark. But this time I have at least got a fairly good reference photo, and I think as long as I, for me at least anyway, as long as I start with a direct response to the thing as it is from life, then, you know, I'm happy working from a photo later because I've already set up the relationships. Cameras do change the value relationships quite a bit, especially if you're not very good with them, like I'm not particularly good with a camera. And for me personally, I'm looking to get as close as I can to a natural, kind of a natural feeling of light. And for that reason, I would rather be at least starting and setting up the early bit. This is kind of the foundation. It's like the scaffolding, if you like, of the values and the colours that will create the feeling of light and depth. And if I can do this part, from the actual thing in front of me, then I'm happier. Trying to adjust this. So this is the cast shadow, so it wants to be lighter than that, but blimey. Be a bit more chroma. We have a new exercise routine now. Thankfully we have a big garden where we live here and a big trampoline out there. And halfway through the mornings now, after the kids have done a bit of schoolwork with me, we go out and bounce on the trampoline together. And it's surprisingly good fun because I can't get to the swimming baths now, which is what I used to do for exercise. And when you've got two crazy boys doing it with you, you kind of, you don't realise the time going so much. I think let's try that. I think that's probably about right. So the light side should end up very close to the value of the cloth, which it does. Got an opportunity for a lost edge here, which is going to be nice to bring out later. Thinking really just very simply in terms of light and shadow.
Please.
What is it you're after, babe?
That, please.
Sorry?
Put that, please.
I can't hear you, what? No, it's too early for screen time now.
No, it's not.
You can in a little while.
In a little while. 30 or something.
Oh, you even know the time when it's allowed.
8
So it's a bit darker up here. That's almost the same value. So at the top here, it's slightly darker. And it gets lighter with reflected light from the cloth as it goes down here. And it's, by the time you get to the bottom, that is mostly reflected light. It's a really good idea, I think anyway, and it's helped me a lot over the years to study cubes and spheres because you can you learn how value is affected by light and shadow. And what you often find is, especially on a curved object like that, there's a reflected light down the bottom. This is what you'd call the core shadow. Shadow around here on the inside is, I think, is lower value. So I'm just painting partly by eye the relationships now. And the reason this is quite light overall, if I look straight at it, I want to paint it darker, but I need it to be lighter than this, considerably lighter than that. I may do some adjustments at some point, but I won't really know until I get a lot more of the panel covered and I can see where I'm going. And I won't put any of the detail on yet. Maybe my camera's a little bit overexposed. Let's have a quick look. Possibly bring it down a bit closer to what I'm seeing here. It's better. So it's very, this stage for me is really, the more complicated I think the subject is, the more slow and deliberately I'm likely to work. And this one is, for me, is really quite complex, so that's why I'm working as slowly and deliberately as I am today. Is it too loud, do you think? Bowl is very similar, but it's a bit higher chroma. And I think it's perhaps slightly more towards not that high chroma though. So a lot of the bowl that the flowers are in is in shadow. I'm still not thinking about painting a bowl. I'm not bothered about the shape, but I am bothered about putting the colours for the light and the shadow in the right part of the painting. Wants to be about the same value, most of it, as this is mostly shadow. This is all shadow here, that's the thing. There's a deep shadow here, which is about the same value as the cast shadow down here. It's a shadow cast by the little cup, little pot onto the bowl. Be about that value, I think. The rest of it is still shadow. It's lighter, but it's not full light. This part of the bowl is still really in shadow. So I want to make sure the value of it is a lot lower than this value here and closer to the value of the shadow. It's a very small bit of the bowl. You can just see where it's in full light, and it's right underneath this flower. that's a relationship I want to be able to see. Light there. I'm going to put in just a suggestion of a collusion shadow as well under there.
Not much already.
You think that's a lot?
Quite a lot.
I think I'm going slow today.
Well, it's been like nearly an hour.
Is it?
Yeah. Quite a lot.
It's a tricky one today.
So what the stream on?
Yeah.
Ah, I thought you ended it because you weren't talking that much.
Sorry, what?
I thought you ended it because you weren't speaking so much.
No, that's because I'm concentrating, because I don't want to make any mistakes. Sometimes I go quiet when I'm just trying to focus on something. So I'm thinking about the greens now. Of the leaves. It's an awkward place to be mixing them. I don't have a lot of room on the palette because I've been too messy. So the shadow parts of the leaves are almost down. They're darker than the cast shadows, but not quite as dark as the darkest dark, which is here on the palette. So you see, I do a lot of the thinking about the value balance down here on the palette. And if it's right down here, if I've got it right down here, then it should be okay when I put it on the panel. If I need to adjust it, I can. You all right, big lad? That was a big sigh. How's your foot? Oh dear.
Since we don't have any bandages, I just bandaged it up with myself.
You don't need a bandage for what you've got. You've just...
Yes.
A bandage won't make it any better. Bandage is to stop bleeding, really. Okay, that's quite good for shadow.
I'm coming, Mummy.
Big oops.
No, I want the hot cross.
You had a hot cross bun.
I want it.
You want another one? That doesn't seem right to me. Have you been exceptionally lovely? You think you should get 2 hot cross buns?
I just have my tablet.
You think so? I'm not so sure about that. I think it's a bit early yet.
No, it's not that.
Well, what if you sit on it for the rest of the day? That wouldn't be good, would it?
I know.
No?
You can just shout for it.
Hmm?
I'm doing my tablet.
No, I didn't say so. Not yet, big lad.
Yeah.
Light and dark. Mostly thinking, I want to get the hue in the right range, but I'm mostly thinking about, I think this is gone a bit too blue, didn't mean to do that. Bring some of this green gold in actually. Value is good. So that for the shadow parts, it wants to show as being slightly lighter than that deep dark. And the shadow side of the flowers are very light against it. Because the thing is, the value range in the subject here is really, really wide. From the lightest light to the darkest dark, and I can't get anywhere near that paint. So I have to try and figure out ways to make the relationships work. Got some flowers down here. That's actually I'm in two minds about that. I think it might be I've gone too far towards yellow-green. Got some flowers down here. It's a very light one right down the bottom. So most of the time I'm squinting right down. You know, I've got one eye closed and I'm squinting down to try and just to see the relationships, you know. Overall it's coming towards being a very light value balance. So I'm going up the value range quite quickly. There they should be at the same value, which means that this probably needs to come down. This is when the dance starts to happen. It's like this value can come up a little bit, perhaps. This one needs to come down. Because these values should be the same. That's the relationship I'm seeing. And then that may well mean that the cast shadow here needs to come down, which I think is probably right. Probably right, that needs to come down. So these need to be the same value. Which would mean this shadow would need to come down in value a bit. Which would also mean that this shadow over here would need to come down in value too. And actually I think that's right, because this is about the same value as the cast shadow, so that's probably a good change to be making. This value is about the same as that. Bit by bit, just through a slow process, gradually start to get to fill the panel and see the relationships are going to work. This is one of the lovely things about working into a couch, a layer of linseed oil, is that the edges you can just so easy to manipulate. This value here, it doesn't matter what that is. I just want it to be, I mean, it could be anything. It's just a flat area of light. I want it to be, compositionally speaking, just a bit darker. than the cloth. When I say it doesn't matter, it's because it doesn't have a relationship of light and shadow. So it could be, it's just a piece of card actually. So it could be light or it could be dark, you know. I don't have to do a light and a shadow side. But I want this light shape here in between slightly darker. I have an interesting relationship here between magenta flower and the leaf. The leaf it's kind of in shadow, but it has light traveling through it. Comes out beyond this, so. And there is a light flower, one of the green-yellow ones right next to it, and that stands out very brightly against it. So let's see if this will stand out bright enough. Inevitably, some of the values end up closer in the painting than they are in real life, so I have to accept that I can't always get as much differentiation between the light and the dark as I would like to be able to get. And I just can't reach that chroma. I want a really high chroma there, and I'm going with the highest that I can get, and it's not as high as I would like. Can't be helped. Go slightly darker on that leaf. Just a little. No, too dark. Because then I don't have a nice relationship with the magenta. See, this needs to be lighter, and I really want higher chroma in there, but I can push the hue, I can cheat a little bit on the hue and push it more red, which will allow me, at that value, will allow me a little bit more chroma, but not much. Diane says, which Winsor & Newton magenta do you have? Their permanent magenta is PV19. That's the one I've got. Quinacridone magenta is PR122. Yes, that's the Michael Harding one as well, yeah. The one I was looking at earlier, yeah. I have both of the quinacridone magentas, but not Winsor & Newton permanent magenta, which leans more towards blue. That's right, that's the one I've got here. It's slightly more towards blue. So I'm putting colours against each other just to check the values, you know. As far as the hues go and the chroma, I've already kind of figured those out by using Onsor chips to let me know where I am in the range. And what I'm mostly trying to do at this point is to figure out how I want to change the values, which is the big question, they will often change quite a bit what they actually appear from how they appear. And if I can get a good value balance in, then I've got a good start. And if I squint down and it feels like there's light and shadow there, space, then I'm kind of fairly happy that I can continue with the painting. Otherwise, if I feel like it's not working, I might jonk it, or I might just try and spend a lot longer trying to figure out what a value balance that would work. Really in two minds about the background. I think I'm going to bring it down a little bit in value from where it would really need to sit to be in the correct relationship with the subject, because I want these flowers to stand out a little bit more. Just try what would happen if that was lower value. I'm starting to see the shadows appearing on this side of the flowers now. This is what I'm looking for, trying to get towards. So the flowers here are shadow. And this is like, to me, this is the key relationship that I want, is between the light and the shadow of these flowers. That's the bit that I really want to work. And I want to keep the shadows light in the value range, but with enough variation for enough variation between the light and the dark for them still to show as form as flowers, light and shadow. That's the tricky bit. Me anyway. Hello, little fella, how are you doing? Jujo Cat's come to visit, demanding that he's going to be picked up. You may hear a purring cat because he tends to sit on the mic. See, there's a balancing act going on here as well, because if I bring the value of the background down too far, then I lose these magenta flowers a little bit, but if I bring it up too far, then these flowers here don't stand out quite so much. So it's kind of, this is like, I think of it as a bit of like a dance of the values, where I'm trying to figure out where everything is going to sit. And it's slow, you know, I work very slowly, especially when I've got something challenging like this. It's challenging not just because of the complexity of the flowers. I'm not actually bothering to paint those much. It's challenging because there are a lot of different lights and darks. There's a real range here, which I want to show. And the main bit that I want to work is, I want these white flowers to really, I keep saying white, why am I saying that? They're green yellow, these green light flowers, the green yellow flowers, I want them to really sing out. And experience has taught me that a lot of that, making them appear very flower-like, is to do with having a narrow range between the light and the shadow. Perhaps narrower even than it really is in the flowers themselves. There's a nice leaf that comes up here, which is actually gets light enough that it becomes pretty much the same value as the background. It's another relationship for me to be looking at and thinking about. Apologies for not being very with it on the messages today. I think that's an indicator of how tricky I'm finding the subject to paint. There's a lot of relationships here, and I really want this. I want a light overall feel. I'm gonna I want a lot of this to be suggested, and just the flowers, you know, for me to spend more time on the flowers. Oh, Diane says, Michael Harding has a colour called amethyst that looks close in hue to the flowers, but is a mixture of quinacridone, magenta, ultramarine, and diox violet. That's probably would probably be slightly lower chroma, if it's a mix. Probably, I'm not saying for sure. Hello, Kim. And Miriam says, to get a higher chroma in the darks, would you ever resort to glazing with a transparent colour? Despite your alla prima approach, would a glaze seem suddenly wrong in this context? Or could you marry the two? Yes, you can marry the two, and I sometimes do glaze on the maybe the second or the third, probably more like the third session if I go into the third, or maybe even the fourth. You know, if the background is dry enough, I will quite often glaze. In my experience, glazing can give you a slight increase in chroma, but not very much. Very, very little, you know. So I tend to paint the backgrounds opaquely, and if I want more chroma, then I will just paint with more chroma. But I do sometimes glaze, yeah, if I want to shift something. Often I do it to drop chroma, actually, which I suppose some people would call scumbling. But so looking at the overall balance there. But yes, I do. It's not. I'm not like a purist at all. You know, I like direct painting because it's kind of simple, you know, and it helps me to, you know, I like to be working on all the relationships at once. To try and get the overall look. And to play with the value balance. Like overall my values are kind of lighter, but I want them lighter because like these shadows are lighter than they appear to me. The shadow here, the cast shadow slightly lighter too than they appear to me, but I want them like that. I want this a light painting. I have a sneaking suspicion I got halfway through a thought I didn't finish then. Sorry if I did. And I want a shimmer to this one. So I'm going to be doing a lot of softening of edges and things disappearing out, you know, into atmosphere, hopefully. Shadow shapes of flowers up here. Shadow here. I'd say guardedly I'm fairly happy with the value balance. I think I can work with this. I like the fact that it's light. Lighter in fact than no, it's closer to a kind of an impressionist value balance where I've gone up from the darkest dark. I've gone around the green and the black. I've gone up the value scale quickly, so these values are slightly lighter. See, it's really important that the shadow here is a lot lighter than this green, because the shadow parts of these flowers really stand out against the dark of the leaves. Even when they're in shadow, they really stand out. So that's a really, you know, that's a really key relationship of the painting that I need to keep. If I let these shadows get too dark, the flowers will disappear. They won't have the same life and depth. They'll start to look heavy like flower paintings can. So I'm kind of, I suppose you could say I'm trying to kind of, it's mostly like negative shapes I'm drawing. So I'm using the green in the background. After I put the notes in where the flowers were going to go, then I'm painting around them to bring them out, just putting little notes in where there's a shadow or where there's a light. And then if I think all that is working, you know, if I squint right down and it looks all right to me, it looks like the flowers are beginning to appear, then I'll feel confident enough to start actually painting into the flowers a little bit more. To me, if I do that before I'm happy that the overall value balance is good, then I will make mistakes. I'll get the values wrong, and I'll have to come back and repaint whole areas of it, which I don't want to have to do. At the moment, I'm happy that my flowers they're sitting in a nice place. You know, by which I mean they're as I imagined them when I was starting this. They're beginning to stand out as I was hoping they would. And still the value balance is light overall, so it's a lightish picture. I want it to feel suffused with light, and a lot of that feeling comes from light shadows. It's basically an impressionist value scheme. I think I'll say it again, I've mentioned this before. If you take some of the better impressionist paintings, like Monet's early paintings, and a lot of the like contemporary impressionists, especially American landscape painters, if you take their paintings into Photoshop or something and you desaturate them, don't grayscale them because that changes the values, you desaturate them, you'll find that they'll still appear to be suffused with light, and you've taken all of the hue and all of the chroma out, so the only thing that's doing that is the values, and it's very often light shadows, lighter values than you would expect in the shadows. There's an Australian painter called, I don't know if I pronounced this right, Coley Whissen, and if you look up his paintings, they really feel that they're suffused with light, and then if you take them into Photoshop and desaturate them, they still appear to be suffused with light. And a lot, so that's the value balance working there. All right, big man. You want down? There we go then. So you'll see also, it should be fairly obvious that I'm not following the values in the photo. I mean, I'm working from life anyway. So the photograph, there are like 3 stages of width from light to dark. So the widest range of light to dark is in the subject in front of me from life. The next widest range of light to dark is in the photo, because it's a photo taken with a digital camera on a screen. And the screen has a wider gamut from light to dark than paint does. And the most constricted range is the painting itself. So I could choose to do these shadows darker than they appear and have a darker painting overall in which these flowers really pop out. But I want to have this light feel to it, which is, I really like this. I'm quite happy with the way it's going at the moment. I am getting a little confused about what brush I've used for which part of the painting in the backgrounds though. I think bringing the value down here was a good choice. It's still quite light. This is still popping out enough, I think, for me. But I really want these flowers here to show. So I'm quite happy that I've brought down the background. Background showing through there. So I suppose you could say this is an approach that I'm gradually evolving more lately, and I'm working gradually bit by bit across the surface. I made sure that the hue is really close, and I've used my Munsell chips to make sure of that, and that the chromas are as close as I can get them, but the values I'm interpreting so that I get like the feeling that I want. And I think it's something I've been working towards for a very long time, and I feel that I'm beginning to get there. Beginning to get what I want. It's a lot of value practice has brought me to this point. Chroma. Painting cubes and spheres. Omani says, I'm loving your thought process by simplifying to light and shadow. I'm curious if you made your little viewfinder that you use for the Munsell chips, and if so, is it card or something else? This one, I've got a load of them. Some are card, this is just thick paper. I think it's Canson, actually. Tionte, I'm not sure though. Do you want out, little fella? Yeah, it's me. I can't open the door.
Yeah, Jasper shut.
That's his new trick. It's his new trick. He saw it on some video, and he's monkey. Sorry. Yes. So I just make them. And Diane says Michael Harding's magenta is 2.5 RP between 3 and 4th value and 18 chroma. That's insane. I want that paint. Wow. 18 chroma, you sure? And so is Winsor & Newton. Wow, that's very interesting. Hi, Cindy. Yeah, it's a very slow, thanks Lisa, yeah, it's a very slow and deliberate way of building up a painting, but I had a something in mind, you know, I wanted it to be this light feeling. So I'm just, I suppose I've learned to be really patient at the start, because it takes a little while to to build up. If I was painting from the photograph, these shadows would be darker. And I may darken some of them yet, but I need to make sure that they stand out still against it. So it's all about the relationships, you know, and gradually build one relationship, and when I feel that that one's working, then I'll move on to another one, and then go back to the one that I had earlier on. And, you know, you can see it's like, I think of it as a dance. It's almost like a dance, you know, trying to work out what's going to go where, and in the value scale. That's the key to me. It's all about the value scale. Not the only way to paint, but I do think it's quite an effective way, and it's just lately it's getting me personally to where I've been wanting to be and I've been approaching by small steps, I think, for a very long time. And it's not impressionism, and it's not I don't know what you'd call it, really, to be honest. I think it borrows from impressionism, but my colour is more natural and exact, I think personally, than most impressionists, current impressionists would probably, or people who would call impressionists would paint. Like I use Munsell, and I try to get the hues and the chromas very close, and I'm a lot more liberal with the interpretation of the values depending on the kind of feeling that I want from the painting. And this is a happy spring painting of oxlips, you know, and I'm starting to feel light and shadow and form happening here, which makes me happy. Before I start, you know, once I go in there and I start adding some details, carve out some of the petals, probably won't have to paint an awful lot for it to start, you know, coming together. There's some values I need to sort out. This shadow side there needs to be sorted out a little bit. I haven't been as careful as I could have been with which paint I've used for. Like this needs a heavier shadow just in the core shadow here, I think. But I'm quite happy to have a lot of reflected light showing here in the values. So I don't, you know, I mean, I think a lot of Impressionist paintings tend to work with a lot higher chroma than I work with. I'm interested in getting the chroma close to what's actually there. But when I come to the values, that bit is very much interpreted. And I've got to this through doing a lot of just value studies, a lot of value studies. Cubes and spheres. And lately, another thing which I suppose is in a way is slightly impressionist is I've started putting more chroma into the shadows. But I'm finding that it helps me create a more, if anything, a more realistic effect. I mean, at the end of the day, we all just want to make beautiful paintings, don't we? You know, so there's a lot of different ways of getting there. There's a lot of different aesthetic choices you can make, you know. I'm getting really interested in this area here. I really want to bring this out. I think later on I will really be bringing that out quite a bit as a counterpoint to the leaves. So I'm gonna just let me catch up. Thank you, Gina. Now, Christopher says, you'll be tired at the end of the day, mentally absorbing, having to focus for this long. I think that's a skill. That focus it's almost a tangible thing, and it has to be learned. If you paint without focus, I find anyway, if I paint without focus, I make a lot of mistakes. If I paint past the point where I can concentrate, yes, it's like a high level of concentration and focus that you have to hold the whole time. The funny thing, obviously I have friends who don't paint, and I was talking to one of them the other day, and she's project manager, so she works quite hard. The job is quite stressful, and we were saying, oh, how are you, and that kind of stuff. I was saying, I'm really tired, been painting all day, and she scoffed, blatantly, and said, you've been painting flowers all day. How is that tiring? And you can't really explain it to someone who doesn't paint. It's about one of the most mentally tiring things you could ever try and do is paint. And especially when you're dealing with the drawing and the values, the value and the chroma, everything at the same time, it's extremely tiring. You've got to be able to hold focus for a long period of time, and that's a skill that you can develop over time. And invariably, if I try to paint past the point where I can still focus, I start to make some serious mistakes, and I end up having to repaint stuff because I've messed it up. Invariably that happens. And it happens with annoying frequency as well. So it's at the point now where I'm starting to think about it. I'm happy with the value balance. I'm going to carry on with the value balance as it is. It has a light feel to it. I want to start resolving forms now. Now, I know for some people, they would prefer to see a painting that's left very, let's say, unfinished like this, or very loose. But for me, this is the start. I've just been painting very simple shapes, gradually refining them, light and shadow. I'm at the point now where I would begin to think about the painting. How is the painting going to work? Where do I want the focus to be? Obviously, I'm going to work into these flowers next. I'm getting very interested by this area here. I'll do a bit more around there as well. A lot of the rest of it I'll probably will not do much more on. So there's some parts that will be more resolved and some parts less. My little highlight is still there as my light is slightly in the wrong place, but it is showing, Actually, there's a really nice one. Very small highlight. In the shadows, you sometimes find them on the bowl here. Let's make a little note so I know it's going to be there. And that's going to help to show the feeling of light as well. So yeah, I would say the most useful thing I ever did to build my mental stamina was bark drawing. God, that's hard. If you're going for like real accuracy, it's an incredibly effective way to build your mental stamina. Drops to value 2. Keeps chroma 18 when mixed with ultramarine. That sounds nice. I'm going to get hold of some of that. PR122. I need you in my life. Thanks. I really appreciate that, Diane. I'll order some. Cindy says, I'm happy to say that I found, a Munsell student book, edition 3. Yes, that has the colour chips. Yes, I bought it and it should be here next week. Brilliant, Cindy. You can work with that for quite a long time. I worked with the student book for probably about 2 years before I went for the big book, and I was really sure that I was going to want to, that it was going to be really useful to me, and I was going to want to continue using this approach, to painting. I want this feeling of it kind of appearing out of atmosphere. It's starting to come. There's one bit I really want to do actually. It's the middle of this flower here. I think that's going to be really key. It's a much more it's more orange yellow. I'm going to put out a little bit of cad, although it might be too much. And it's nice because there's one side is shadow and one side is light. I don't have any of my flat chisel brushes clean now, which is frustrating, because I like to use flat chisel brushes for that. Where's my... I have one, yeah. See, it's more green. You see it just in this flower, just in the middle. There's the little colour there, and one half is in the light and one half is in shadow. Bring that down. Focal. The light side is very light and higher chroma. Can't do the chroma, but shadow side. It's a very distinctive shape. I'm going to have to wait until that is a little bit drier to really sort this petal out here, I think, because the drawing is too out. No, that should be okay. I just wish I could get a bit more chroma there. That would be so nice if I could. Probably further along than I think, but I'm going to leave it there for today. The sunlight is starting to come into the studio now. Hi Olaf, you made it. Anyway, how long have I been going for? 2 hours, wow. You see, sometimes you just you get focused in on what you're doing and you sort of forget about the time What this light overall value balance is doing is it's making these magenta flowers really pop out, which is nice. You know, I like that. I may bring down the shadow side of these a little bit, but I'm happy where they're sitting against this green of the leaves, the dark green of the leaves. So we'll probably keep that, I think. That's a good description of it, Ginia. Yeah, building level by level with focus. Yeah, I suppose that's a good description. And then what tends to happen is you feel like you're not getting anywhere for ages, and then suddenly it all kind of goes about the time when you've got the panel pretty much covered. And then you can see all of the relationships and how they're working together, and then you start making small adjustments here and there where you want to make them. I think overall this value can maybe come down, but I don't know, we'll see. Mostly probably from now I'd start working into the flowers and into this area around here to resolve it a bit better. I want this little pot to really pop out. I think compositionally it's quite important, and this bit of cloth here I'm going to refine. All of this I'm quite happy to disappear off into atmosphere, which is a kind of an effect I like. We'll see. I mean, this one might come out okay, I might ruin it yet. Georgia says, Paul, if you paint on this after your live stream, could you record? Don't have to talk to us, but this is so interesting. I don't want to miss any of this stuff. Yeah, I don't know if I can really. The problem is, like, I guess I could record it. I'm going to be putting together some more structured online workshops soon, which will go into a lot more detail about all of this stuff. Well, if I'm doing it whilst I'm painting, I'm not kind of thinking about teaching so much. I'm thinking about the painting and just trying to talk a little bit about what I'm doing as I do it. But I'm going to have something a lot more structured for that soon, I think. Yeah, I bet you do, Renee. There comes a point when you just need to rest your brain, doesn't there, Alison says, it amazes me how much you get done in 2 hours. I think paradoxically, it's just by working very slowly, It's working slowly, and then gradually it kind of starts to fall together. Ginia says you won't ruin it. I hope you're right. We'll see what happens. Thanks very much for watching today. I'll put the main camera back on just for a second, because can I bring that up? You can see like the setup. It's easier for you to see like the value balance between what I've got here and what's actually there. You can see like what I've got here is in a much narrower value range than that down there. Although the lights of my flowers, are somewhere in the same position in relation to everything else. If you look at the light of my cloth against the light of the actual cloth, it's really, really different. The cloth is much, much lighter, My background, actually, if you look at them like for like, is slightly darker, but in terms of the relationships internally in the picture, it's not quite the same. The only bits that are probably the same are the darks of the leaves are probably about the same value. So the internal relationships I have within this painting is what's there, squashed down into a smaller range, and then I've taken the middle and I've shifted it up. That's pretty much what I've done. Gives you an idea of how I've approached it. But you can also see how different on this camera the actual subject looks from the photo, which funnily enough was taken with the same camera. I'm not a photographer by any stretch, so I don't understand what makes all of those differences. Yes, I will be continuing. I may not work on this again until tomorrow because the sunlight is coming in now. A lot depends on what happens with the flowers, because they may not last. I picked them this morning in the garden and I put them in that little bowl which is full of soil. They look like they're going to survive. I hope they are, because I want to finish painting them and then I want to put them back in the garden again. So we'll see how we go. I'll bring the painting back up. just for the end. So you can see again where I've got it to in relation to the photo at least, and give you some idea of what's different. Thanks very much for coming today, and I'll see you all tomorrow, which will be the last stream for this week, and maybe this painting will be finished then. I have in mind that this one is going to stay fairly unresolved and loose, so we'll see where we end up. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.